Okay, so we move right into our discussion. I would first like to introduce our two panelists. We have two panelists today. We have Mr. James Curtis, affectionately known to us as Ebu James. Looking for him on my, okay, there you go. Just a little bit about the good gentleman. He was born in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, so he's a Vincentian, a Garifuna Vincentian. He has been an advocate for the promotion of Garifuna duo, both in Europe, Belize, the US. He has been a member of many organizations and leader of many organizations, including organizations related to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Garifuna Duo, athletes. He's the founder of Team SVG International Support that supports athletes throughout their career. He is the pioneer behind the pen relays being a possibility for students in Belize as well as St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He is the owner of and founder of Curtis Enterprises. They make it right. That is Mr. James Curtis. Our next panelist is Dr. Gwen Yunes Gonzalez, proud Garifuna woman born in Belize. She, as long as I have known her, has been an activist for the lifting of the Garifuna culture. She's a linguist in her own right. I believe that history will record her as one of those persons who is fighting currently for the preservation of the Garifuna language. She's an educator. Currently, she's an education officer in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology. All right, so we will move right in. Mr. Curtis, you are up first, and I will start by asking you a question. This question that I have for you is based on information that I believe that I have long known. And in the recent past, I've been hearing that what I know to be true might not actually be so. So all my life, I've been hearing that there was a shipwreck off the coast of St. Vincent, a ship that was carrying some slaves, and then the slaves swam ashore and they intermarried and intermingled with and I will use the word Carib because I know you will correct that, with Caribbeans and Arawak Indians who would have been on the island of St. Vincent. That is the way I learned our history. So I ask you, Mr. Curtis, if you have anything to add or if there is anything that you would like to rearrange with that history that I'm sure I am not the only one who learned it that way. Mr. Curtis, you can go ahead.
Good evening, all. Since protocol has been established and we have a short period of time, I will just get to the questions and see how best I can answer them or dispel some myths and misunderstanding. Concerning the shipwreck, yes, I believe this shipwreck happened. However, the evidence that I have personally gathered does not support the theory that the first black person would have arrived in Europe in 1635. It doesn't make sense to me that the country became black totally, almost 90% or 96% black Caribs, as they were called as a derogatory term, but Garinagos. By 1797, when the exile happened, they're talking about removing 5,000 persons to Bali. So, and if a few slaves swam ashore, it will be highly unlikely for them to populate the country in 140 years. It doesn't happen because the Garinagos was a force to reckon with in the beginning. So they would not have just allowed their women. And most of the slaves who got to swam ashore would have been men. But a question that I would ask, just for argument's sake, I will state something. We know that when a ship is laden with slaves heading from Africa, they're shackled. There's some period of time during the journey where they will be unshackled. One of the most dangerous time for the purveyors of slaves was when they see land, because that's the time the slaves would want to escape. That period of time, as soon as they would see land, those slaves are taken below and they're double shackled. They're making sure that they're not going to lose their cargo then because of the possibility of them escaping before they get to whoever is buying them. So between Beckway and St. Vincent and the Grenadines in that channel, if a slave ship sank, and when it did sink, as I believe it did, those slaves are not going to escape to freedom unless somebody helped them. Unless somebody like them helped them. Because the Garinagos was fighting everybody at that time. So they would not have willingly accept the black people then. So it proved that black people were there before. And beyond that, if we go back to the 13th century, 1200 plus, 43, I think, 1243, when Musa Mansa Abubakari, the second emperor, set out to sail across the Atlantic into the New World with over 2,000 ships. Never returned. We believe that that's when the first Africans arrived in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that is why, as Vincentians and as Romanians, Garifuna people, they say we have a chip on our shoulder. We have a certain pride that many other persons with melanin from the Caribbean doesn't have. No disrespect, but you would find that in yourself, that we have a level of pride. No matter if they say we are poor, we are proud because we don't possess that slavish mentality. Now, mentally now, today, we could possess the remnants of slavery. We could suffer the atrocities of slavery, but we were never physical slaves. That would be my belief.
Okay, so there would have been melanated people on St. Vincent before, even if
before Columbus got there. He met us there. I will boldly say that we saw him when he was coming, and that's why he never physically landed on St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He was not allowed to. He was denied. Because again, if there were slaves, slaves never had that will to fight. There's been no other country but Haiti. And Haiti is in question also, that the black people were there before slavery. They met them there. And that's why Haiti was forced to lose their independence and then gain their independence. In 1804, a mere 7 years after the exile of the Garinagu from St. Vincent, Haiti became independent. A mere 7 years after we lost our independence. We would have been, when we celebrate independence, political independence of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, or colonial independence on October 27th every year. And we remember 1979. We have to also remember 1797, because that's the year we lost our independence. Because now we have some interdependent because someone else has a crown over the country. But before, in 1797, it was King Joseph Châteaubriand. He was the supreme leader and ruler of our country. We were independent then. So we lost our independence and then they gave it back to us. And somehow we shout a lot about 1979, but we were free before our freedom was removed for that period of time. I don't know if I've answered your question, ma'am.
Okay, I have some follow-up questions, but I will leave the persons on the Zoom to ask whatever questions they might have in the chat. So I have another question for you. So we had Garinagu on St. Vincent and we had some issues with the British. The Garinagu believing that it was our home and the British believing that they were entitled to it. Could you tell us a little bit about the Carib Wars, Joseph Châteaubriand, who was our fearless leader, and then the exile?
The first, what they consider the first Carib War would have been the one before the death of Joseph Châteaubriand. Before the war in 1795, however, there was a series of encounters, of course, because colonizers were seeking entry. Before the British was actually the French, who came with some religious exploit and decide to befriend the natives, which we had already have the hybrid between the Arawak and the Kalinagos, and then the Mandingos from Mali, which was one of the greatest empire at that time. And we had seafaring men and navigators. The black people that came to St. Vincent Falls was drenched in brilliance. Abubakari, the second, was considered the richest man in the world at that time. And they're saying even to today's standard of riches, he still would be up there with the richest men in the world. His empire spread throughout Africa. And, it was so much about him that we need to continue to study and teach our children about. However, the Carib War, before the Carib Wars actually started with England, Britain, in the case that we want to make now, there was a series of conversation and a series of encroachment where the French was allowed to do certain things, the British was allowed to do certain things once. And we're talking about 300 years after Columbus, because even as we're looking back now, St. Vincent and the Grenadines would have been the last Caribbean country to be settled by the British. St. Vincent and the Grenadines remain the only Caribbean country that ever signed a treaty that Britain had to sign a treaty to even calm the things down. And I think it was more of an appeasement, but they did. And it shows the vigor of our people that they will have to put some pen to paper. They took every other country without any conditions. They just walked right in and did what they wanted to do. And although they were faced with some little fights here and there, they were victorious in the end. So when the first Carib War happened, there was casualties on both sides, and that's when they decided to deal with treaties, etc. They went to Martinique and they signed some papers there. The treaties was actually signed there outside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because there's a lot of seeding. There was a lot of seeding happening. There was transferring countries and parts of countries outside of the countries. Nobody knew what they were doing when they were parceling out these lands. But however, St. Vincent and the Grenadines came down to a point where Joseph Châteaubriand, who would have been the chief of chiefs, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines wasn't going to put up with any of it. And the war continued. Little wars that was not even mentioned in many cases. But again, we didn't write. So we learned most of the things that they wrote for us to read. But then we have to really trash it out. This is part of what we're doing now. And it came down to a point where there was a lot of casualties being suffered by the time the Second Carib War came around, starting in 1795. And Joseph Chattoyer, of course, was challenged to a duel. Now, there's lots of conversations about that too. And they talk about Alexander Leith, Lieutenant Alexander Leith, killed Joseph Chattoyer. And again, Joseph Chattoyer killed Alexander Leith. So there's some misunderstanding there again, because in those times and right now, the research is showing that it wasn't possible for the two men to kill each other in the way that it was demonstrated. And there are writings that are claiming that Joseph Chattoyer was, Alexander Leith was murdered by Joseph Chattoyer. So a dead man cannot murder somebody. So if it proves that Alexander Leith died first, so when Joseph Chattoyer eventually died, it was from the poison that they placed on the tips of the sword, and it was because of even he was able to get touched in so many places because there was multiple persons fighting Joseph Chattoyer, not just Alexander Leith. So it was considered an ambush. It's just so many information surrounding that. For instance, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, when you go to Fort Charlotte, you find the cannons that are placed there. And those cannons was placed there after the death of Joseph Chattoyer, after the exile, because the fort was completed after the exile. But we have cannons that are pointing inland. Why? In every other countries I've gone to, and I've made it my business to pay attention to the forts, there is no country that I've been to that there's cannon pointing inland. Because generally, the problems are coming from the coastlines. So clearly, the British knew that the fight was not even over. And they was always afraid that something else would happen. One of the cannon in particular is pointed to Dorchester Hill, where the duel took place. And if we look at Dorchester Hill today, it's predominantly white. We know that all the dark-skinned persons were removed from Dorchester Hill and they were replaced by lighter-skinned persons. And even when we were young, we used to call the people at Dorchester Hill Bajan. Many persons didn't think about it, where that came from, but that's because they were pale persons that was removed from Barbados and placed on Dorchester Hill in order to remove that stigma. That was one of the most interesting and sacred sites, because that's where our paramount chief met his death. And they were trying to remove and erase that whole part of our history. And so they replaced it with a total different caliber and kind of people. So coming now to the exile, and Dr. Kai, you are asking these questions, but these questions cannot really be answered in one segment. There is just so much information that I will be sitting here talking forever. So I'm just trying to paraphrase some things and just put some things out for food for thoughts. And I encourage persons to research what I'm saying and challenge me on it beyond today. I am ready. So when the battle finally stopped. Well, I should say a few things before that. 1797, Joseph Chatelier died. The battle continued until 1795, Joseph Chatelier died. The battle continued till 1797. That is almost unheard of, because normally, even in the Bible, when the leader falls, when the king dies or the leader of that battalion falls, the war stops. Everybody retreat. So it proves again that the Garinagu was not just led by one man. The Garinagu was subdivided in the country and was able to sustain themselves under the leadership of Joseph Chatelier and still be able to maintain their personal discipline with their different tribes and different communities within. So there would have been chiefs in different parts of the country. And so the fight continued even after the paramount leader died. Eventually, there was much loss to the Garinagu, and we were placed on Baliso. Our ancestors were placed on Baliso, which is a small island in the Grenadines of St. Vincent. And you know, anybody living in St. Vincent know where Baliso is, and many persons from Belize now know where Baliso is. They have been hearing about Baliso all their life, and many Garinagu from outside of St. Vincent has been to Baliso and experience. And I will venture to say that when you land on Baliso, you will know that you are on Baliso. You will feel that you're on Baliso, and you will realize that that is the last place that the Garifuna ancestors or ancestry from the US, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, any Garifuna out there would know when they get to Baliso that is home, that is a bedrock. That is where everything subsided and the exile began from there on March 11th, 1797, to arrive in Rotan on April the 12th, 1797, an entire month. By then we would have lost over 2,000 persons in that journey. But still there's just so much history that we were not taught, because these writings was orchestrated in a way that we would not learn, we will not understand where we came from. And for the ones who are culturally illiterate today, the colonizer did a wonderful job. They did an extremely expert job in making sure that we did not know who we were for hundreds of years. And when you do find out who you are, then you cannot stop yourself from being proud as a Garinagu. I don't know if I answered your question.
Okay, thanks so much, Ever James. We will invite folks again to, if you have any question, to put them in the chat. We're going to leave St. Vincent right now on the exile, and then we're going to be talking about something having to do with Belize. Now we turn to Dr. Gwen. And Dr. Gwen will be talking to us about Garinagu as educators of Belize, effect on the culture. Go ahead, Lucia, Jeremy, Evo James.
Good going on. Good night. Night time here in my beautiful town. Thank you very much, Dr. Jeremy Cayetano, our moderator. And I want to thank all those in our space. I see my many indigenous brothers and sisters. I see my brother Chick. want to welcome you and your team. Thank you for joining us. I met him at a conference online and we've been linking up so many things in common. All right, I have been hearing from when I was kind of conscious, you know, you're alert when you're young, then you get conscious. There's a consciousness. And that kind of kicked in when I was a teenager. I am 53 years old now, thank you, Jesus. And I have been battling in my mind, contemplating all that I've heard about Garifuna history. And I'm glad that I made a pilgrimage to Urume because it reopened my eye. I refocused based on information that I got there. And I've been hearing our history, local history, that the Catholic Church selected Garifuna men as for teachers to go into the Hispanic and the Maya communities to educate them. And then I started to think. I said, if they're there educating them, I wonder if they took along their families. What happened to their families? I wonder what is the long-term effect of all this happening. So I have been wondering. And here and behold, one of our intelligent Garifuna youth, Brother Jerry Enriquez, came up with this nice book that I want to encourage everybody to have. This book is an interesting read. This book can have you rethinking and also a little shaken up about the experience. But this book is mostly centered around the story of Mr. Andres and Miss Jane Enriquez, right? He documented the experiences. And there were so many others. But I am now I've started a research, and so I'll give you my preliminary findings. It's not final. So I still have other children and grandchildren of those who were sent out of their Garifuna communities to interview. But talking to those who I've interviewed, I was like, wow. It shows that one, as what Sister Lucia Ellis said, right? They found these men to be intelligent. They're very resourceful, right? So they send them out in these communities. And the more I'm speaking to people, the more I am wondering if they really wanted to educate in terms of knowledge alone or evangelize. Because in this book, and it's called To Educate a Nation, right? Mr. Andres spoke about being catechist, right? Catechist. And for us, that means that you are trying to win over souls to whatever faith to God. So they were sent out. Some of the communities that I've learned that they were sent out to: Monkey River, Dolores, Otosha, Aguacate, San Narciso, San Antonio, Piquesarco. Some went to San Luis, Sartaneja, and I even Sunush. And I even learned now that in those days, way back in the 40s, 30s, that Libertad was not really called Libertad, because one of the interviewees, told me that one of her siblings, right, was born in Pembroke. So I said, Pembroke, is that another village? Where is that I don't know here in Belize? And then I learned that Pembroke was Libertad. So they also went to Pueblo Viejo, Santa Cruz, Shaibe, Pachacan, and there was a community, it doesn't exist anymore, Holy Trinity. We have Santa Teresa, San Miguel, right? Some of the areas that they were sent to. Now, I want to know what effect this transition has on the Garifuna culture in terms of the language and the way of life. Some of the participants in my study, they've told me that they spent more time in those rural communities than their parents' homes, birth community. As a matter of fact, the one group said that they feel more, although they speak Garifuna and they immerse themselves into Garifuna culture more when they started high school. But in their early years, they feel that they were more connected to the Quechua culture, not the Garifuna culture, although at home, their parents spoke Garifuna to them. So they were able to speak Garifuna and understand Garifuna, and they ate hodot and all the cultural things. But they were more into the Quechua culture. But thankfully, in the holidays, summer, and as my mom also explained to me, that summer holidays used to be April, May, thereabout, right? Because it was around the harvest. So even that change kind of negatively affected us, because when you look at the planting time and the reaping time, if holidays were centered around that, then families would have helped themselves and be self-sufficient in terms of farming. But now they have erased that from us. And so farming kind of became like a negative thing, because I remembered when I was challenged in third form. So I had to repeat third farm, but when I failed third farm, my dad told me, oh, you failed? You're going to the farm. And I wanted to continue my high school education because I've been preached to that education is the key. So why am I going to the farm when I didn't see the connection? Now, as an older person, I see the value of farm, right? Food security. So they also shared with me that there are some families, though, in the communities, the parents did not speak Garifuna to them. And so Creole was spoken in those households outside, and they were in Maya communities. And some families didn't allow their children to mingle with the Mayan children only in school. Outside of school, no. And so the children didn't learn Maya, but two of my participants, they learned as they went along all the languages. So they're very versed in their language. However, I also have some that I interviewed. One that I interviewed said that in the home, the mother spoke Garifuna to them, and the mother kept up the Garifuna way of life as much as she could. But their dad only spoke English to them, although he knew how to speak Garifuna. And I tied that in with my interpersonal communication that I did when I was doing my dissertation for my doctoral program, interviewing many of the elders that I spoke to. They said that the educators at that time did not want them to speak their Garifuna or Creole or Maya on the compound. You had to speak the Queen's English. And the educators at that time were even brazen enough to tell the parents to speak Garifuna and English to their children at home. Right? So I thought about that. I said, because of being educated, and they spoke perfect English, well spoken when it comes to English, but challenge in their language. Then you look at some of the challenges that these families have to endure. My granduncle, before he passed on, he spoke to me about their challenges on their journey, right? Apolonio Lopez, we call him Grandpa Puri. My grandmother, Marcela Lewis, also told me about the struggles, how they had to go on horseback rides and going through like muddy area, swamp river crossing, and sometimes never cross on Dory. And once they leave, it's that long trek. So you can't turn back. You have to just keep on going. And in Creole, we say, take your licking. So one of the benefits, though, of this transition, of this journeying from community to community, is that they have learned to grow up as in an inclusive environment. So parents, so the students, as they grow, there's no settling down, because some stay like 5 to 7 years in a community, some more than that, and then they move from community to community. Some only a year they stay there. So they were kind of like nomads, right? Teacher nomads, I'll call them. So they move within these communities. So they learn to appreciate other cultures as they went along. But some, as going and appreciating other cultures, they're not fully immersed into their culture. But thanks to holiday, because during holidays, they go back to their communities. Like, a pair that I spoke to, he said, okay, our grandmother make sure that we were farmers. We went to the farm with them, although then they learned the farming method of the Quechua people and how they plant, how they build houses. They joined that. They went fishing with them. Everything, they were immersed into the Quechua up to now. They are still attached in that way, right? But they learned about their Garifuna culture. So going back to their communities help them to go into oneness with their Garifuna culture in the community. But that is only occasional. So they come back. So I am seeing a pattern then that living with them at a young age indeed has an effect on them in terms of culture. Because then, although they still identify themselves as Garinagu, they can speak more of the life in those other communities and not in the life in their Garifuna communities, right? So I am not sure, and I cannot make any conclusion if that was purposeful on the part of the church leaders at that time, because they were also teachers and they had to make sure that they evangelize. right? And one of the persons who I'm supposed to completely interview is Lucia Ellis. But she gave a presentation, and in her presentation again she referred to the Garifuna men as evangelizers being sent out there, right? In the process, those who didn't take along their families, other families start to build up, because then some people got bred out of almost every village. I'm just kidding. But other siblings were left along the way. And she said that this evangelization created family breakdown, the Garifuna family breakdown, because women were left alone and only saw their significant others or their husbands at a certain time, because the journey is so far. Those who didn't take along their families, they have to come back occasionally, right? And she believes it's the beginning of the destabilization of the Garifuna families, right? So, so I am so excited about this research, and I will present my entire findings when I'm finished. But in a nutshell, this is what I have found out. So in some cases where the parents ensured that the children spoke back to them in Garifuna, the language remains. But in terms of the mental thinking, right? Like I said, some see themselves in terms of their practice mentally as that what they grew up in, and that's only natural. But along the way, they learned other things. For example, one that I interviewed said they were a lot in Hispanic communities. So she knows how to excavate, chimole, all of that, in addition to our Garifuna cuisine, right? And they learned Spanish as they went along, but there wasn't any stability per se in a community. But one good thing about those two main families is that they went along. So they're although some of their siblings were born in different communities, not Garifuna communities, right? Because you have some of the siblings been born in Pachacan, some in Tunush, right? Like I said, one in Pembrocal, and then they had others who were born in Monkey River, and another sibling was born in San Antonio. So although their parents are from these Garifuna communities, if you follow where you are born, then you're not from there. So you are there based on your parental connection, right? Not really from birth. And so you see that it has affected us in terms of the Garifuna communities in a different way. But some got back really in touch with the Garifuna roots because, for example, a couple that I spoke to, they said their parents returned to Barranco, right? Father went back home. So that kind of assisted. So it has been a very interesting conversation that I've had so far. And then the cultural disconnect. I'll have to see how disconnected the population is. Because like I said, I am going to interview more people, and then I will make that presentation. So far, that's it. So far we can see that yes, we are educators. We brag that our people went out there to educate. But how has it affected our culture? Right? And there's nothing wrong, and I'm not undermining those educators. I don't want anybody to think that. Not at all. Because we have seen the effect in the other communities. Because you'll hear, like I've heard some of the Maya people, they would say, our Mayan brothers and sisters, oh, my grandpa, let's talk about this teacher. Teacher Lopez or Teacher Enriquez, you know, they will call out some names. Sometimes I don't know who they're talking about, but you know, that's the you know that they impacted. Because I have worked in a community outside of my community as a teacher. You become godmother, counselor, you become godfather for the males, you know. So people depend on you, but they're very appreciative. And so that's a blessing in all this. And like I said, two things that came out, they learned the traditions of the other cultures as they went along, and also they were able to share a part of their culture too, right? So as they went along, but it wasn't like when you are rooted in your environment. But again, I want to encourage you, get this book to educate a nation, right? If you're here in Dangre, you can get it by Mr. Oscar Bookstore in Belmopan, Bakers, right? And I think I saw when it was published at the time that you can get it at Angelos Press as well. And of course, you can contact Brother Jerry Enriquez. So this is a very interesting read to educate a nation. Autobiography of Andres P. and Jane V. Enriquez. And I thank you.
Mr. Seguin, go ahead, Mr. Curtis.
No, I was saying thank you to Dr. Nunes.
Oh, okay. There are several comments in the chat. There is one question, I believe, for Ebu James, Mr. Curtis, and I will ask it now. The question is, how many Garinagu were left at Urume? How did they manage to survive after the colonizers took control of the island? You're muted, Ebu James.
Hello?
Go ahead.
We don't know for sure the total amount of Garinagu that remain, but we know there were many. There were hundreds remaining. It was impossible for all the Garinagu to be removed, and the colonizers knew that even when Fort Charlotte was completed, even in its completion stages, 1817 or something, they placed the cannon. They placed the cannon there around 1816, 1817. We're talking almost 20 years after the exile. They're pointing a cannon inland. Without knowing anything else, they knew that there was Garinagu remaining. They couldn't possibly remove everybody. And if they did, I wouldn't be here today. And it would not have been also a quest to remove the idea of who the Garinagu was. I mean, they made every effort. And I'll state this now. I try not to use the man name too much, but it's stuck in our head. Christopher Columbus' name was branded in our head, in our heads, and the names of his ships. There are reasons for those things, because almost every child, I could say every person that grew up in the Caribbean, born in the Caribbean, would remember the names of Christopher Columbus ships. There are reasons for those things. It's to dissuade and to put us in a different state of mind, to encourage us to believe or coerce us to believe that persons came to save us, that did some wonderful things for us, discovered us. You can't discover me if I'm there before you. You need to tell that to someone else. So we were there and they knew we were there. And so they made an effort. I mean, the Garinagu was able to travel between the east and western side of the country through the mountains. A case in point, through Greg's, through Greg's area into the Vermont area, into Chauncey, Clare Valley, even through those areas, they were able to travel from side to side. And through the Bonham and Petit Bonham, there's pathways that still exist where you know that our people traveled. And so it was difficult for them to remove everyone. If you notice some of the different types of persons in St. Vincent and where some of the people are located. For instance, if you look at the people in Fancy, although there's a certain sort of mix, you will see in Fancy there is more of a melanin mix than in, say, Sandy Bay or Oya. My grandparents migrated from Fancy. My great grandmother moved from Fancy in 1902 after the volcanic eruption. But there were many. There remain many Garinagu in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They couldn't possibly, even after they load the ships and the ships was overladen, it was said that they removed, I think it's 100 or 140 persons from each vessel. And they picked the lighter persons because the melanin is what scared them. In most of the countries that the colonizers overran early, obviously there wasn't any persons with melanin there. And St. Vincent was always a safe haven. There were free slaves even after. Part of the issues was that St. Vincent and the Grenadines, then you remain, was a safe haven for slaves. Runaway slaves from other countries would come to St. Vincent for refuge because there was a different hybrid of persons with dark skin lived there who were protectors. And so it's no question that many Garinagu remain in St. Vincent and the Grenadines after the exile.
Okay, and the second half of the question, how did they survive after the colonizers took over the island?
Well, actually the island was even split before the exile. The British maintained some parts of the country while the Garinagus, which would be the persons who survived, most of them in the Sandy Bay area, overland area, still remains. They carved out a section of the country for those persons. And there were other parts of the countries that Garinagu still remain, and they survived just how they were surviving for hundreds of years. They had to hide in different parts, and one of the things that concealed them, they had to pretend that they were not Garinagu. They wasn't allowed to speak the language, and thus the plight we have now, where you have a language, the only language in the Caribbean that was bred in the Caribbean. Every other language except the dialects, every other language was brought to us in the Caribbean: the French, the Dutch, the Spanish, the English. The Garifuna language was created in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And still today it's spoken and written, and we didn't speak it in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As a matter of fact, in 2011, a group of us held several workshops in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, hosted about 97 children at Thomas Sanders Secondary School to start that process. Now, many persons had gone from Central American countries and the US to kind of try to inhibit the thing and bring back the culture somehow. But we decided to start with the children. 2009, we've gone with the Garifuna Coalition USA, and we did basically a survey. About 22 of us went to St. Vincent and Grenadines. Dr. Cadrin Gill and I was the only born Romanian there on that expedition, and we actually unearthed a lot of information because we spoke to the oldest persons in every village that we could go to find out what they know. And so we garnered a lot of information, even confirming the fact that it was organized. It was an organized effort to kill the culture and kill the language in Europe. And again, outside of this question, Dr. Nunes spoke about the Garifuna men being placed all over Belize, and we could look at it as with the religious quest, but also it was still drenched in colonialism and an intent to break the families down, to stop the cultivation of persons, togetherness. Remember, they exiled the Garinagu for working together against them. So now they will do the same thing. We went from Rotan to mainland Central America, and that was another issue with Aleo Benny, because they placed us in the front line. We were already warriors, so they placed us in the front line in the Spanish War. And so our people start dying. We went to mainland Central America, and then they found other ways to punish us and to disconnect us. So when they placed the men all over the country, supposedly to educate, it created the diseducation and created this trend of families left without a head. And families without a head is very difficult to survive. So the men was removed again. So it was also another effort to slow down the Garinagu, because they didn't know that we was gonna live in the first place. They thought we would all be dead on Baliso. Then that didn't happen, because we came back every night to St. Vincent and start trying to take back stuff. You know, it's so much conversations, but we have to dive into it with open mind and dispel some of the things, because they just doesn't make sense.
Okay. Thanks so much, Ebu James. There are some things in the chat that I wanted to address. I'm not sure if you'll be able to address all of them. It says, genocide is not only killing the being, but removing and destabilizing who the being is. So removing the man from his home and further restricting him as the head to then use his language has to have been deliberately done.
That's right. That's right. It's a genocide.
To bring destruction. Somebody says, interesting research. Was it a deliberate act of separating us from our culture? And we have, I believe that that's a yes. So it's like, when you want to speak to that? Was it deliberate?
Well, definitely was.
Like I said, growing up, I thought it was an exciting thing. I still applaud, like I said, my study is not to undermine what our grandparents did, our Garifuna men. It showed
they did what they had to.
Yes. It showed our intelligence, because some of them didn't agree right away, right? They were convinced. But the older I get and the more I'm hearing about different moves that the suppressors use, and some came smiling. When I hear about the Columbus story, Columbus, you know, he deprived them of all their goodness and then killed them out with disease and all kind of thing. And then I was trying to remember the name of this study that I was told about, where they took the children from an early age in one of the countries, but one of the indigenous countries. They took them and then they educated them far from home. So
they brainwashed them.
Yes, they brainwashed them. So by the time they're finished, they had nothing disconnect from their original selves, right? So I thought of it, and then I thought of the teachers going. I said, and then when I learned in this research now that they also evangelize, I thought they only went to teach. So evangelizing now gives me a different perspective. So were they trying to really kill our belief? So that's another question that I have to add on to my list, because I was going to send a questionnaire and I said no, questionnaire will not bring out what I want. But the rich dialogue that I'm having, and I'm learning additional info that I didn't think about. But
Dr. Nunez, Dr. Nunez, we understand something else from the idea of having the Garinagu men spread out. The Garinagu is also bilingual, because they have intermixed with the French. They have the Arawak language, the Taino. They have the languages from out of Africa, from out of Mali, which Mali was not as modern day Mali. It was encompassing the whole all around Gambia, and every place was considered the Mali Empire. So our people who ended up in Rutan spoke Spanish, they spoke French, they spoke the Garinagu, spoke English. They had a vast knowledge of, and they were bilingual. So you can't leave them together. It was important to spread them out and let them think that, oh, we're doing a wonderful thing, we are educating. But while we are busy educating on the outside, our culture is being taken away, is being shut down. There was no place that the men was interacting with their own families. So it was a disarray. And it transcends even to now.
Yes, I was listening and said it's a cultural rape.
Yes, right? Yes.
Cultural
and
rape.
It's the beginning of cultural illiteracy in our people.
Correct.
Because if we remove the breadwinner, if we remove the protector from the home, if we remove the teacher from the home to teach someplace else. And Dr. Nunez, it's been pointed out to me that they try to place geographically, they place the men at the farthest point that they could from their home, because they didn't want them to return even on the weekend. They want them to be away, to be gone.
That's why I told her when they left, they are going.
Strategy.
Yeah, so maybe it was a strategic move on the point of the priests, and because then too, when I think back, it is only of recent, a couple of years now, that we were allowed to take our drums and our sisira into our Catholic church. I'm a Catholic, so I can only speak of Catholic. Because the Garinagu were not allowed to go and adigraha. If you go on adigraha, while talking to the elders, I was told you were not allowed to go into church because you went to the devil worship activity, right? So now we are a confused people, generally speaking, because the churches have contributed. That's another story now, right? That's a new research. But the churches have contributed to our cultural erosion because they do not understand the beauty of our our spirituality. They don't understand. They are westernized. That's their way. Our way is not wrong. It's another way. It's our way of connecting to our great spirit, right? So the same great spirit they are talking about. So we need to do more of this that we're doing now. We have to re-educate. We have to show people it's not bad. Being ourselves is not bad. And so we have to be careful about how we participate in some of the activities. I have learned to say no, because I think about things when they ask me, do that or be part, I say, if that will backfire down the road. So if that will backfire down the road, no care how much money they give me, no care how hard they plead, I won't be a part of it. Because we have to look at the bigger picture. We have to get out of what they've put us in. They've put us in a celebratory mindset, right? And when you're in a celebratory mindset, then there isn't proper rational thinking. Worse, when alcohol, not the Holy Spirit, the liquid spirit, when the liquid spirit gets involved, you lose your senses. So I can't see why people say, oh, they had a good time. They were drunk, they had to take them home. So they have left us in this celebratory mindset so that we cannot refocus on where we are to be. We are to be in a space where we are comfortable with self. We have to re-educate ourselves to rethink our situation. For example, straying away a little, I look at November 19th. My grandaunt, Auntie Christina, she told me that when Thomas Vincent Ramos started 19th, there were only a few of them. Some people stood on the sideline and they laughed at them. The few were parading. Some stand up and they spit. All of that she told me, God bless the dead, because she and I used to sit down and chat. And she said there were only a few of us committed to see the bigger picture, right? So you have great men like Pantaleon Hernandez, who worked along with TV Ramos. We have Domingo Valerio, right? You had Caterina Bemuche. And then you have Grandma Musha, Alexandrina. They were some of the few who got on board. No, they were not looking at a bashment 19th. They were looking at a progressive 19th. 19th so that we can progress so that we can have a day that we are recognized, but we have lost it because of all of this influence from the conquerors. So we don't have any economic empowerment, so we don't have any say. Our ancestors, our people, they stood their ground because they had the economic empowerment that we do not have. And we don't have it because we are educated in a system to serve, service to others, right? So how do we wheel and come again? Because they took our learned men, our sharp men. Because when you hear people speak of those men who educated, sharp Garifuna men, right? Yes. They were top of their games, and they were supported by great women. So that's the next story that I want to talk about as well, right? As in my research, I'll put a separate thing about the women, because these mothers, they generally stay.
They were protectors. They were providers.
And they in the end, the fathers brought in the funds and helped with the discipline generally. But the mothers, they stood their ground. Whether they went with the husband, because they would be the husband would be at school and help in the community, and they would work along with their husbands. And outside, those who didn't go with the husbands, they had to stay behind. They had to make sure that the family was intact. So our role as women must be considered, must be researched. Because in my research, I found out that language sustainability, language maintenance is through the mother. The mothers, generally the women, because they are the ones nurturing the children. They're the one with them the most. So that's why then, after reading all of that, find out all that data, then I said, oh, that's why it's called mother tongue. Alice here mother tongue. I said, but I was puzzled about mother tongue. I said, but the fathers speak the same language. So why is it mother tongue, right? Why do they call it mother tongue? Now, in my research, I found out now that it's because the women, they are the ones who pass on the languages, right? Because they are the nurturers. So I believe that we can reverse it, but it has to begin with our mindset. We have to rethink where we are and stop just settle. I listen my young people that stop settle. When you settle, the problem. Because once you settle, look at your terrible situation. You're stuck there because you've settled. No, you have to. Maybe you're in a situation, you settle there for a little while. No, you break there for a little while, then you stop. And then you go ahead, out of it. Right? So I think that's where we have to be.
Okay. There are several other questions and comments in the chat. We are over 30 minutes over. It was supposed to be an hour's panel discussion, but I will ask our two panelists to just search through the chat to see if there's anything that they would like to respond to or have some final words for us. I will start with Ebo James and then Dr. Gwen, and then we will be finished. Actually, we will never be finished. This is the beginning of a conversation that we hope we will continue to have. Ebo James, you had anything else that you wanted to share? Anything from the chat or personally you wanted to share? And then Dr. Gwen.
Somehow I can't see the questions on the chat right now. But I know we have we're pressed for time. But what I would like, and I get you just said it, we will never be finished. That this journey continues. I think there is a certain consciousness that our people have been missing out on, both in outside of St. Vincent and Grenadines and in St. Vincent and Grenadines. When our people are armed with information of who we really are, where we came from, and there are many different types of persons in St. Vincent, indentured persons that came after a certain time. But it's really, I just want to stress that it's really important for us to focus on our Garinagu ancestry, because when you could protect a place, when you will give your life, your blood for a place for almost 400 years, when other countries fell to the crown and to the colonizers within a few years, and they're telling us St. Vincent and Grenadines has the oldest botanical garden in the world. How is it possible? They found trees there that they had not seen any place else, that wasn't allowed to grow. Then they say it's the Queen's garden. Who is the Queen? A queen, a British queen, was not even on the throne at the time when the botanic garden would have been started. It would have been way before. But even because they're stating it, then we should take note that if we, a little tiny place, are having the oldest things, you know that our things were sacred and they wasn't touched and they were preserved by blood and sweat. And so we must be respectful to that. And we must love our country a little more. And we must flush out the foolishness in our country that is happening today, because people died so our country could survive to now, and that we could have freedom and a state of mind. So we cannot allow this freedom to be the railroad now and just accept any foolishness, because we were not built that way. The Garinagu did not allow any foolishness to happen. They stood their grounds, and I think we need to stand our grounds today as well. In Yorome, in Belize, wherever. In these United States, the oldest, the first playwright in the United States is a Garifuna man, William Henry Brown. How did that happen if we weren't brilliant people? The first black captain in the U.S. military, merchant marine captain, Hugh Malzac, a Vincentian. I don't know if he has Garinagu blood. He's a Vincentian. We have vigor. I could go on all night, but we don't have time. We cannot allow these sick things that continue to happen to us as a people. We have to stand up. We have to stand up, because people died so we could stand and live now. We'll continue on another day. Thank you.
Thank you too. Thank you so much, Mr. Curtis Ebu James Sereme. Teresa Gwen?
Well, I didn't even realize we passed our hour, but rich discussion, and we can stay here for 2, 3, 4 hours. But it's important that as a people, we rethink what we have learned from a long, long time ago. The internet, Mr. Google, or Miss Google, is a very good space. But you have to decipher, you have to decipher what is the truth and not so true. Today is the first of our series, and it's important that we have an open mind and tell our story. We brought we decided Abu James would start because he's from St. Vincent and he knows what's up. So when I went to St. Vincent, the Prime Minister addressed us and told us about our history and opened our eyes that the information about this sword fight with Chatouillet and they kill the man. There also nothing like that going on with one-to-one sword fight. They ambush the man. And Abu James has been able to open our eyes. In terms of the education, I want to applaud our great grandfathers and our great for some of you who educated this nation, right? In the process, we were able to reconnect with our roots, with our indigenous brothers and sisters as well, and learn additional things. But also sacrifice our villages, our homes, deprive our children and grandchildren of the opportunities for that connection. Like I said, some were born here, some born here, some born here, some born here. But the beauty of it, they were along. Some of the families, they were together. They moved along. And so the women stood their ground. And again, I want to encourage you. And he didn't even know that I was going to do what I'm doing. But everybody needs to get a copy of this book, man, to educate a nation. It will open your eyes from the experience of one couple. You learn other things too, not only about them, but on their journey. On page 22, other outstanding Garifuna teachers. Like I said, this book is about Andres P. and Jane V. Enriquez. One thing that stood out, experiences such as these portrayed only a glimpse of the personal and family sacrifices that several Garifuna men and their families have made in their service as pioneering partners in taking education to the remotest. Remotest. In Garifuna, we say, the mafia got to get go. Yaguro, Yaguta. Areas all over Belize. So I want to pay homage to our outstanding men. They were Cirilio Gutierrez, Secundino Ogaldes, Eugene Cayetano, John Zuniga, Charles Martinez Sr. You have Francis Cayetano, Simeon Marcos Sampson Sr., Santiago Labriel, and he served in Punta Gorda from 1913 to 1937. You have John Paulino, Aparicio Marin, Sam B. Daniels, and Maka Grandpa, Francis Martinez, Peter Avila, Joe Ogales, Candido Arzu, Theodore Palacio, Cirilo Arana, Godsman Ellis, Octavio Castillo, Lionel Peter James Lopez, and these are only few of the many who left, right? And I also mentioned Apollonio Lopez. He's from Shanebite. That's my granduncle. And his wife was from Dangriga. So these men and women were very, very, very much a part of creating this unique fabric. So when I look at it as well, they are great examples, right, of determined and dedicated men and women. Eugene Cayetano, he had his We had also had Cipriano Arana, right? So we must be grateful to them. We must embrace their legacy, but we must also understand that their departure from our communities also help in its deterioration. So we must do our part. Don't stand on the side. Stop standing on the side and criticize. Do something in your area, right? Do something in your area. Make sure that you try as much to learn our beautiful Garifuna language and the history as it is. Through the songs, there's so much to tell. So much stories are told in the music. But if you don't understand it, then that part of our history is being lost. So don't only allow them to look at us as merriment people. We have to get out of that. I look at the November 19th parade here in Dangra. It's beautiful. But I see the alcohol and people come to me and they complain, right? The alcohol, even on the street side, it's like a drunk for all. No, that is a way of raping us of our culture. So let's get together. Let us try to sponsor our drummers to teach others to drum, to beat that drum, teach others to learn our language. We have Golusi Community School, and I am helping as well at Holy Family RC, trying to get the intercultural bilingual program off the ground and focus on the Garifuna culture while we learn to live among the other cultures. We need that. We cannot lose ourselves. Por favor, please, Singa, I'm begging you. Ora lu lefege shu wagu. Wage lube worry kabala wadaru lefege shu wagu. Many of us are educators, many of us in the education field. Education starts from the home. The organizations cannot be at the forefront. The organizations will be support. Because the first voice that child hears is the voice in the household. So the household can decide to educate about our culture and speak the language to them, or they can decide not to. But we're having this generation shift. Because if I cannot speak it, if I only understand, I cannot speak it to my child. If my child doesn't understand nor speak, he cannot speak it to his child. If that child doesn't, then he cannot speak it to her child. And so you see the gap. But we can do this. Our ancestors fought. When you hear about the story and the journey and know that the wide open sea was their burial ground. So there's no tombstone to say, I am going here and cry over them or tell them hi. No, no, no. That ocean was the burial ground. When you think about that, all that sacrifice, we must not allow the conquerors who brainwash us. They have been doing that, but now that we learn their system, let's use their system of education to wheel and come again and get ourselves grounded. So that's my plea tonight. Right?
Thank you so much.
Don't go and educate and lose yourself in the process. No, no, no. That cannot work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa.
Sarah May, Lucia Gwen, thank you so much. Sarah May, Ebu James, thank you so much. And we're grateful to everybody who came on the call. We have just started the conversation. We will continue. We will let you know when we will be doing this again, having another panel discussion on information that we want to rearrange just for deeper understanding.
Spell.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Dr. Kai, before we disperse, I want to also inform everybody in this space that we are also doing a project to help our brothers and sisters in Yorome
Okay.
after the volcano. We've done our first run, but we will postpone the other run, too much COVID and issues, until March 2022. But we have t-shirts for sale, $20. So we're begging you guys to please buy the rest of our t-shirts. And that's our fundraising right there. Right as a gift, Christmas is coming. It will look pretty in a nice bag, a little thing you tie it, or put it in that Christmas hamper, you know, beautiful. It will look beautiful. And then nice soft material, not a stretchy material t-shirt. No, nice and soft on the skin. Good when you wear it, right? So I'm begging you, I'm not asking, I'm pleading that you please buy our t-shirt. We will be at certain points. What date? 18th?
18th.
18th. Here in Dangria area, we will be by where, Dr. Kai?
6 miles coming in on the 18th. 6 miles.
Oh, by Shaibel.
Yes.
So we'll be by Shaibel, and then
Belize City.
We'll be by the Belize booth. I mean the police booth.
Police booth. Yes.
Right? Is that the police booth by the
3 miles.
3 miles, the sea people?
Heading to Belmopan. 3 miles outside of Belize City, heading to Belmopan.
All right, that's the one by
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard, that's what I'm looking for.
Over
50 had a senior moment. Coast Guard. So please stop and buy our t-shirts. And if you want to give us a contribution, we're open for this contribution. So there are many organizations trying to empower Garinagu. Like, for example, I'm a part of Wachari Wagia Foundation, and then we have the Wachari group there, and man, economic empowerment for the Garifuna people. So we have to embrace it. We can't just wag with tail, that no work, right? So let's embrace those who want to make a change, and we can be a part of that change. So let's be a part of the change. Anything else about our project there, Dr. Kai?
I think that's it. We are having our language classes next year, starting in January. Look out for those. We will continue. We started this year. We'll continue to teach the Garifuna language. We, as Dr. Gwen said so eloquently, we can't afford to lose it. So it is each of our responsibility. The responsibility lies on us to learn it and teach it. So the UMI project will be will be continuing that journey of teaching the language January 2022.
And as soon as COVID allow, we will be continuing the idea of having the workshops in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
That's right.
As soon as COVID allows.
Right.
And just Chambers is asking if they can purchase the t-shirt on the web.
We'll soon make that possible.
Yes. We'll work on it.
Dr. Kai, I think we're terribly over time. Is vital information.
Yes.
We don't want to get off the air.
Yes, I am worried about BBN because it will then be the station was 1 hour.
Yes, so do the voter thanks then.
I have a question.
Johnny Garcia for facilitating.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, sir.
I recognize that you're recording the program.
Yes.
Where could we go to find the link for this program?
Okay. I will
we will send the link out after.
Yes, we will send it out, and if you send me an email, rundin12 @gmail.com, 12 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 @gmail tell me who you are and that you are requesting it, then I can forward the link to you as well.
Darnell has her hand up. Go ahead, and then that's the last question we will take, and then we will need
No, it's not a question. I was volunteering the NGC Belize City Branch's Facebook page to post the recording.
Yes, no problem.
Okay.
I'll have it on my Facebook. It will also be on the Eurome Project Facebook page, ecumenical Facebook page as well.
NGC
Darnell.
Belize City Branch.
I need to.
I just got a message from BBN saying that they support the Garifuna culture all the way. Yay, they're not cut way off. Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. Jeremy. Dr. Gwen, you are doing the vote of thanks. You could go ahead, and then we will be off.
Yes, so we want to thank our partners. Where's my phone? Our partners, BBN, we want to say thank you very much. So to BBN, Sereme, we were live on the television and Facebook. We had little issues, and we want to say thanks very much as well to Sanctuary Ecumenical College, the National Garifuna Council. We want to thank all of you who stayed with us. Very rich interaction, and that is what we want. And I know that there are people from United States, from Eurome, from Belize, from all over here with us. We are very grateful. This is, like I said, this is only the beginning. We want to again thank Brother Johnny Garcia for helping us to facilitate this session, and all those who have contributed to our cause. And I want to thank you in advance for buying our t-shirts and for supporting our fundraising effort so we can help our brothers and sisters in Eurome. So Sereme, and I cannot end without saying a big thank you to our great and awesome, great spirit, our God, for allowing this space, and our ancestors, for being a part of this activity and continued guidance, and for all the sacrifices they have endured to ensure that we're here. So make sure you buy your books, buy your Garifuna books to learn Garifuna. Contact me. I have puzzle book, I have games, and we have so many other writers. Sister Lucia has different books in terms of Garifuna language. There's a dictionary. So we have so many resource that we can use. So Sereme.
All right, Sereme Sirisegwen, Sereme Ebu James, Sereme everybody, and we look forward to seeing you again when we have another panel discussion. Thanks everybody, and good night.
God bless.
Ayo.
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 Ayo.